Good evening, you're listening to The Truth Tank and I'm your host, The Tank. If this is your first time listening to The Truth Tank, a big welcome. If you're a repeat listener, welcome back. So if you've listened to the previous few episodes, you'll know that I had a catastrophic computer malfunction at the start of March. The refurbished piece of crap I bought last year shit itself. The logic board had a memory fault and was only a matter of time before it completely went, along with all the data. I managed to save the data and all the episodes I'd been working on for the past 4 months, and I've been editing my way through that. As a result, live communism has been delayed till mid-year. I'm hoping probably mid to late June at this stage. I've got some books written by some of the people who were actually involved in the revolution, so I'm reading through that. So I'm going to give myself a bit of extra time to get through some of those books. I've got Trotsky's biography I've been reading. It's over 600 pages and it is providing some very interesting insights into what was happening. And this isn't stuff that was written 100 years later by an historian. This is written by the guy who was actually there. So this new information is going to make the show even better than I had planned, hopefully. I also recently appeared on the second annual Movie Boners Best and Worst Awards for 2024. I presented Best Acting Performance. It was a lot of fun. I had to change what I was doing probably about 3 or 4 times due to this computer issue. I had something much grander and a little different in mind. But unfortunately, as soon as I said yes, my computer shut itself about a week later. Then I had to wait to hear back about the computer. That went on for a week. Then it took them 3 weeks to find out what the problem was. So I had to really change what I was doing. So I presented a short silent film for Best Supporting Acting Performance. It was a lot of fun. I presented the same category last year. So if you want to see my short silent movie, head on over to YouTube and check out the Movie Boners Best and Worst Awards for 2024. Give them a like and a subscribe as well. They're a great podcast. They go very in-depth into movie reviews. So definitely check them out. And that leads into tonight's episode. And sticking with the theme of movies, this episode is going to be on the 2025 Academy Awards. This is going to be Ding Dong Oscars Dead 4, I think I'm up to, 3, 4. I think I'm going to do this every year. I've done an Oscars episode for probably the last 2 or 3 years, so I'm going to stick with that theme. Every year I'm going to put out a Ding Dong Oscars Dead episode where I'll be recapping and reviewing the Academy Awards for that year. At time of recording, it's about a month after the Academy Awards. It's the end of March. I'm recording on the 30th of March. I think the Oscars was 2nd of March, 1st of March, something like that. I wanted to record this the day after the Oscars, but obviously I didn't have a computer and I couldn't record. So I am making that up now, so hopefully I can remember most of the notes I wrote down and what I was trying to say, but some of them are a bit jumbled and I can't remember what I was actually trying to say. So it should be fun. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's show. This is episode 74 of The Truth Tank, Ding Dong Oscars Dead 4.
G'day. Don't skip. Let me interrupt the podcast that you're currently listening to with some blatant self-promotion. What do you get when you mix 2 Aussie mates, a splash of booze, well, more than a splash, and some microphones? You get Cheers Big Ears, hosted by myself, the Chad, and my mate Matt, and sometimes, but more often than not now, my missus Bobby. It's a podcast of adult beverages and not so adult conversation. It's not serious, far from it. Well, except for that one episode, but that was just that one. We're available wherever you get your podcast fix. Cheers, Big Ears.
So before any good awards show comes the red carpet, glitz and glamour, and all the wankery that goes with any type of modern day awards ceremony. The Oscars is no different. Now, for whatever reason, I watched the red carpet crap before the Oscars this year. I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm pretty sure the telecast was a little later than it had been in previous years, and the red carpet was on right beforehand. I only saw probably half of it. So I thought, why not? I might as well watch it. I'm watching the Oscars straight after. It made sense. I don't like to be too overly critical of people, but that pretty boy they had hosting the red carpet was probably one of the most robotic, cringy things I've ever seen. His dumb jokes that weren't funny, and just kissing the ass of anyone that came in front of him. I've always loved that bullshit about the red carpet with all the insecure actors and actresses fishing for compliments from whoever's got a microphone and a camera pointed towards them. And while there's a lot of genuine people there, I mean, obviously not every actor and actress is a complete phony, there were some, and can somebody please feed Ariana Grande? She needs food desperately. If she gets any fucking skinnier, I think she's going to have some real health issues. Every time I see her, she gets skinnier and skinnier. And obviously, she's had a pretty traumatic couple of years with a terrorist attack at one of her concerts a couple of years ago. And yeah, you can tell there's something going on with her. She has very sad and needy eyes now. She's not the same quote-unquote pop star that she used to be. What the fuck has happened to Miley Cyrus? She has got an alien face now. I don't know if she's had any type of work done. It certainly looks like she has. I think she's overdone it. She looks like a fucking alien. She's completely ruined her face. There was one guy the host was talking to who seemed really down to earth. He was one of those guys that just tried and tried and tried until he kind of made it, and he finally did. Can't remember his name or what he was nominated for. And this year I've only seen, I think, 1 or 2 of the movies that were nominated. I really wanted to see The Brutalist, but I was kind of put off by the 215-minute running time. I just got no time or patience for movies that long anymore. Killers of the Flower Moon was a good film. It was just no reason for it to be, 225 minutes. There was no reason for it to be that long. I mean, do a director's cut if you want to have a movie that's over 3 hours. It was a great movie, and at some point I'll have to do a review on it. I had planned to do a review on it when it came out, but things got in the way. Yeah, I just don't see how a movie about a architect and the brutalist movement needs to be over 3 hours long. I mean, I'm sure it's a great film. It seemed to do pretty well. But yeah, I don't know if I can sit through 215 minutes in the cinema anymore. Apparently it's got an intermission. Killers of the Flower Moon didn't. That wasn't as tedious as I thought it was going to be. But after about the probably 2 hours and 45-minute mark of that film, you started to get kind of uncomfortable in your seat and started shifting your body around, and that's when the time factor really kicked in. And not to mention, it took the entire afternoon to watch. And going back to the red carpet for a second, I think the best dress was Timothée Chalamet, as always, with his monochromatic canary yellow matador-looking suit. I do like Chalamet. He's a very talented actor. He looks like he'd be a fun guy to hang out with too. He looks like he's pretty down to earth and not as pretentious as some people in his position. A couple of years ago when he had the same kind of all black matador suit with no shirt, I thought that was pretty cool. Thankfully, he wore a shirt this year. I did like the all yellow, trying something different, standing out. I wish some of the guys would be a bit more out there with how they dress. The black tuxedo was such a fucking boring look. And one funny thing at this part was Scarlett Johansson being late to the interview. She was trying to do the interview and she came running over, and unfortunately the show had to start and she missed out. Which kind of goes back to what I was saying. Celebrities see a camera and a microphone and they want to get their face on camera again. Or maybe they just like talking to interviewers. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't interviewing them, and I'm not an actor. This is just purely my opinion. As with every other awards ceremony, especially the modern ones, the dresses and the design of some people's choice of clothing gets more over the top. Some of the dress choices this year were interesting. Some were good. Others were completely over the top and looked, what's the word I'm looking for? Looked a bit impractical. One of the people from Wicked had a very unusual choice in dress. Must be really uncomfortable wearing that stuff as well for all those hours just sitting there. A lot of those dresses and stuff that look good aren't really that flexible. I mean, I've never actually worn a dress, so I don't know, but they look pretty tight. They don't look like they'd be the easiest thing to sit down in. I think I'd much rather go with what Adam Sandler chose to wear, but we'll come to that in a sec. So the 2025 Oscars kicked off with a performance of the Wizard of Oz theme with Ariana Grande and the other woman from Wicked, don't know her name. It was pretty cringy. I mean, the singing was great. It's just the pretentious, over-the-top cheering and clapping for every second verse. Just let them sing the fucking song, then clap. It was very much Hollywood jerking itself off. They do this every fucking year. The performance was great. Ariana Grande is a talented singer, so was the other woman. Actually, I'm going to look her fucking name up. Cynthia Erivo, or Aravo, however you pronounce her name. Great performance. The over-the-top clapping and cheering for every second verse was just way too over the top and very unnecessary and took you out of the song. It was the opening of the show. You didn't need that much over-the-top praise. As I just said, it was just Hollywood jerking itself off again. However, there was one bright spark to this year's awards, and that is no Jimmy fucking Kimmel. They have finally got rid of the unfunny prick, and hopefully he never comes back. His jokes, mainly his politically themed jokes, were, one, inappropriate for a ceremony that's supposed to be celebrating movies and filmmaking, and two, they weren't funny. It was a very nice change to see Conan O'Brien intro. I thought he had been a host once before, but that wasn't the case. Right off the bat, he was much better than Kimmel and his 5-year reign of unfunniness. Conan was actually pretty funny. He breathed a bit of new life into the awards. They had become very stagnant, especially with Kimmel's sense of humour. It was good to shake things up and go in a bit of a different direction. I did like his Amazon joke. That was pretty funny. And when they cut back, I think later on in the show, and had the Amazon guy deliver something and then the porch pirate come and steal it, I thought that was pretty funny. Bit of modern humour. He also shied away from anything political. I don't think there was too many Donald Trump jokes this year. Don't think he made any, because that was Kimmel's go-to, whether you like Trump or not. It's a movie ceremony, maybe kind of keep things a bit more focused towards the entertainment industry. Amazon does fall into that category. Kimmel definitely had that irrational leftist mindset that Trump is evil, so we have to make fun of him and discredit him every second chance he gets. Or maybe his liberal overlords told him to, I don't know. But it was nice to not have any political jokes for once. It was more so about the entertainment. There was a few jokes about current events and stuff, but it wasn't too over the top. It wasn't too personal either. It was just comedy for comedy's sake. The headshot joke was pretty funny as well. I can't remember who that was on, but it was pretty funny. And once again, this comes back to keeping the jokes entertainment focused, because most of the jokes were aimed at people in the room, like they used to be, like Billy Crystal did, and how the Oscars have always had those kind of jokes. They're always aimed at the people in attendance, and why not? I mean, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? Or should I say, if you can't laugh at yourself, then do you have the right to laugh and make fun of other people? If you can't take that type of criticism yourself? Because there was a lot of jokes directed at people, and it was pretty funny. And there was no Will Smith to slap anybody in the face because he took a joke the wrong way. The only problem was the opening monologue and the whole joke section was pretty much a whole stand-up comedy routine. It went on for way too long. It was about 20 minutes, the comedic intro. If the Academy is that concerned about running time, why don't they just cut that out? You don't need a 20-minute stand-up show at the start of the Oscars. You could have just cut that out, made a couple of jokes, then just get straight into it. Also, I think you should probably cut out the songs, not all of them. I don't think you need an intro song. Maybe just some clips from maybe a montage of the songs that are nominated rather than having to spread them out throughout the night, because it's not a concert, it's an award show. One year they did over-the-top performances of the songs, and it added 20-something minutes to the running time. Yeah, the Barbie one last year was funny, but it just adds more cost and over-the-topness to an already bloated and increasingly irrelevant award show. Another funny moment in the opening comedy show was John Lithgow's face if you went on too long during your speech. He was going to pull that sad, disappointed face. It was very funny. I just wish he did it more often. But the highlight of the comedy opening act, and probably the highlight of the night, was Adam Sandler in shorts and a hoodie. That was fucking hilarious. It was original, and he didn't really stand out either. Everyone's wearing black suits. Well, the guys were anyway, dark-coloured suits, and he's there with this blue hoodie and blue shorts and sneakers. Sandler isn't really known for being a snappy dresser. He's one of those guys that's just comfortable in track pants and a hoodie, and good for him. He doesn't have to spend money on expensive clothes. That was fucking funny, and is worth a look up on YouTube if you haven't seen it. So that brings to a close the opening comedy show. that kicks off the 2025 Academy Awards. At this point in the show, about 25 minutes to half an hour have already gone by, and not one single award has been handed out. So next time I hear the Academy whinge about running times, I'm going to send them a letter. Because you could have shaved a half an hour off the fucking show right then and there. The opening musical performance was a few minutes, and the 20-something minute comedy routine, yeah, I guess Conan O'Brien is a stand-up comedian. He's a funny guy, but at the same time, just get on with the fucking awards. But at the same time, it was nice not to have any political jokes at this point. It was just all about the entertainment and the movies, which was good to see. So maybe the Oscars are just going to start to focus on the films again and cut out all the political correctness, wokeness, and whatever political party is in office that they don't like. Another massive time waster was some of the skits in between the segments, like the Sandworm and Deadpool performances, whatever you want to call them, during some of the musical numbers. The Sandworm thing was pretty funny, but at the same time, it's kind of just get the fuck on with it. But like I just said, it's about half an hour into the show and not one award has been handed out yet. So this brings us to the first award of the night, which is Best Supporting Actor. Robert Downey Jr., who won last year, presented this year. He kind of went on and on. Another thing I'd like to see removed from the Oscars is all the ass kissing whenever they present one of the actors or the directors, and they have people who worked on the film come out and say, oh, fucking so-and-so, you were the best person I ever worked with. You're just so brilliant. Your vision's so clear. And we couldn't have made this without you. Just go straight to the award. Have one presenter like they used to. Read out the nominees in any specific category, then hand the fucking award out. How hard is it to go? The nominees for Best Actor are Timothée Chalamet, Adrian Brody, Guy Pearce, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Brad Pitt, and the winner goes to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I can't remember who else was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, apart from Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, and the award goes to Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain. I watched that the other night. It's actually a pretty fucking good movie. I really enjoyed it. I always like those quirky travel films with a bit of comedy and drama mixed in. However, like Movie Bonus pointed out, Kieran Culkin is really the star of that film. Jesse Eisenberg was more of a co-star, because that movie is pretty much all geared around Kieran Culkin. It's mostly through his experiences and through his eyes. Jesse Eisenberg is more of the secondary main character in it, because there's only a handful of characters even in the film. There's only about 7 or 8. And yeah, pretty much the whole film focuses around Kieran Culkin's experiences. Jesse Eisenberg is in it a fair bit as well, obviously. He also directed it. But Kieran Culkin, I feel like, well, 1, he steals the show, and 2, I think he has most of the screen time, because the whole thing with that film is Jesse Eisenberg is worried about his cousin, Kieran Culkin, and he's always either watching him or talking to other people about how is he doing. But the whole point of view from the film is, through both the characters, but mainly through his kind of happy-go-lucky, really random lens that he sees the world. So Kieran Culkin wins for that. Another thing Movie Bonus also pointed out was Kieran Culkin is pretty much playing himself, or appears to be playing himself in that film. And during the acceptance speech, because I hadn't seen the film when I saw the Oscars, after seeing the film a couple of weeks ago, I can see that now. Because during the awards, he was kind of very offbeat. I think he even swore. I think he said the F word and it didn't get bleeped out. He was very over the top and very random, which is how he appears in the movie. I bet you his brother Macaulay Culkin is jealous as fuck too. But Kieran Culkin is a good actor. I have liked him in other films I've seen him in and TV shows. He had a small role in, Fargo Season 2. He was good in that until he got killed. This brings us to the first snub of the night, which was Guy Pearce. And in the last couple of years, the Academy has really snubbed Australian actors and actresses. I don't know, maybe they just hate Australians, but they never seem to hand out any awards to many Australians in the film industry. And I don't know, I haven't seen The Brutalist, as I mentioned, but I got a feeling that Guy Pearce's performance in that is probably better than Kieran Culkin's. I don't know what the criteria is they look for, if it's just purely political. I think it probably is more political, who's going to go on the best campaign trail. And if you've listened to Ding Dong Oscar's Dead, the first one, a couple of years ago. I went deep into the campaign trail for the Academy Awards. It's like any political campaign. You've got to have the parties and the fundraisers and kiss all the right rings to even get looked at. It's not the first time Guy Pearce has been snubbed either. He's been nominated a few times, I'm pretty sure. Well, he should have won a couple of times. He's a great actor, and I'm not just saying that because he's a fellow Australian. He's been one of the best actors going around for probably the better half of 30 years. He's a very dynamic, very interesting actor. He can pretty much play anything. He makes a good bad guy. He makes a good guy. Another snub for Best Supporting Actor was Edward Norton. He did look a bit disappointed. And once again, he has been one of the best actors for the better part of 30 years as well. I mean, who doesn't love him in Fight Club and I was going to say The Incredible Hulk, but that wasn't really that good. What's that movie he did when he was really young when he plays that psychopathic killer and he convinces, the cops and the jury that he was innocent and he turned out to be guilty. Can't remember what that was called. Primal Fear, maybe? Anyway, he's been a great character actor forever. A Complete Unknown is one of my favourite films of the year so far. He was great in that. The only difference, or the only discernible difference really, is that he actually was more of a supporting role in that film, and he does a lot with the time he's got. He's in the film a fair bit. It's obviously Charlemagne's film. He's playing the title role of Bob Dylan. But Edward Norton is great in every scene that he's in, and this is a guy that can do lead roles, supporting roles, much like Guy Pearce. I just thought one of those two should probably have won. I mean, it's a very hard thing to pick. I haven't seen The Brutalist like I mentioned, but if I was going on films I have seen, I probably would have gone Edward Norton. He was very different too. Like, he's playing a real life folk hero. It looked like he also learnt to play the banjo, or at least pretended to, which was a bit more effort, I thought, than Kieran Culkin kind of playing a version of himself in a travel movie. Yes, Kieran Culkin's performance is good. It's not great. I mean, it didn't blow me away. I didn't think it was anything particularly that standoutish about it as compared to other Best Supporting winners. Like, take for instance last year with Robert Downey Jr. winning for Oppenheimer. That was a very memorable role, and it was a very different Robert Downey Jr. we're used to seeing. This is a guy that spent the better part of 10 years playing one character, Tony Stark and Iron Man, and then he comes out with this dark and manipulative, two-faced character in Oppenheimer. All his scenes are in black and white, and he shines through, and that film is a juggernaut. It won Best Supporting Actor, Best Director, Best Film. It won so many awards last year, and Robert Downey Jr. was great. He, with the time he has in that film, which he has a fair chunk of it, his character of, what's his name, Levi, someone or other, was brilliant. Once again, he's playing a real life character. He was, so different from Tony Stark or anything we've seen Robert Downey Jr. do before. In those first couple of scenes, he's nearly unrecognizable. And then, when you discover more about his character as the more the movie goes on, you kind of find out his motivations are just jealousy. A very petty, very common reason for doing what he does, which most people can relate to too. We've all been jealous of someone or something in our lives, and this is a guy that has all this power in the government who pretty much has the same kind of petty desires. I really want to watch Oppenheimer again now. So, moving along. Next award was Best Animation, and this is presented by Goldie Hawn and Andrew Garfield, a interesting combination. Goldie Hawn looks good. She hasn't been in a movie for a long time. They had a bit of a mushy intro with Andrew Garfield saying that his mum used to love Goldie Hawn's films and she was her favourite actress and stuff like that. And she was like, thanks, that means so much, yada yada yada. The typical ass kissery. A little cringy for presentation. I don't think some of that was necessary, but the best animated film, or I think it was best animated short film, I can't remember which order they came in. Best animated feature went to Latvia for Flow, that movie about a black cat. Actually looks pretty interesting. The animated films are probably the ones that interest me the least, but that one actually looks pretty good. The Australian entry is snubbed again, so that's the second snub for Australia. but it's animation, so who the fuck knows what they look for. It also marked the first international animated feature win. It was also an independent feature, and it kind of opens this category up to the world. There was a lot of international wins and independent wins this year. And as the night progressed, the theme of independent film was very prevalent, which was good because in other years they've kind of snubbed it for the streaming giants like Netflix. So it's good that they're actually looking more closely at independent films as opposed to ones that are just produced by big studios, even if it is animation. So this leads into Best Animated Short, also presented by Goldie and Garfield, and this went to In the Shadow of the Cypress, I'm pretty sure. So this is 2 back-to-back international wins. This went to the Iranian filmmakers. I can't remember their names, didn't write them down. So you had Latvia win, followed by Iran. Is that a political message, or is it just a case of the best film won? You never know with the Academy Awards. I do like to think they are rigged, and I think they do have some blind favoritism when it comes into films, and I'm not saying that this film doesn't deserve to win, but the Academy definitely uses its massive platform and the awards ceremonies for their own political reasons and their own agendas. And yeah, there's nothing in the world that isn't rigged. If humans are involved in it, there's going to be corruption of some sort. I'm not saying that's the case here, but over the whole course of the awards ceremony, I'd say a majority of the awards are determined by who throws the best parties, who goes on the best campaign trails, shakes the right hands and does all that ass-kissery. And it's less to do with the actual talent of the filmmakers or actors or the artists involved in the filmmaking process. Because if that was the case, Saving Private Ryan would have beaten Shakespeare in Love in '98. And I covered that on Ding Dong Oscars Dead, or one of the Oscars shows I did a couple of years ago. Harvey Weinstein literally made up a fake news story, planted it within the Hollywood media about Spielberg pushing around extras. Shakespeare in Love didn't win because it was the best film of the year. It won because Harvey Weinstein threw the best party of the year, kissed all the right asses, and went on the campaign trail better than Spielberg did. That's what it came down to, because Spielberg won, I think, Best Director for that year or something, where he also should have gotten Best Picture for Saving Private Ryan. So if that's just one example of how rigged the Oscars are, and that can be completely fact-checked, so if you don't believe me, please do your own independent research and find out for yourself, because that's 100% fucking true. There's enough evidence to say it did happen, regardless of whether the Academy has put their hand up and said, yeah, we favoured this film over that because of this reason that wasn't related to the creative process. Even if that's the only time that's ever happened in the whole history of the Academy Awards, and that was the only year where external factors besides the artistic process have played a part in determining the winner, then the entire Academy Awards and the Academy itself needs to be brought into question, because if it can be corrupted one year, you can assume that every other year has been tainted, even if it is squeaky clean from that year on to 2025. So next up was Best Costume, and this one should have been a pretty obvious one. I mean, costume is, once again, it's a kind of a hard category to pick, but you'd think that either period pieces or sci-fi or fantasy, anything that has a bit more creative input and design and more effort would be considered. I mean, obviously, like a contemporary movie is a lot easier to come up with the costumes for, because a lot of that shit already exists. If you're making a movie like Gladiator 2, you probably have to make a lot of the costumes for the Roman period, and you have to do a hell of a lot more research to find out, was this the correct armor the Romans wore during this time period? Because everyone likes to think that the Romans just wore red. That's not true. They wore different colors depending on what countries they were in, the availability of cloth to make said uniforms and clothing, and the weapons and armor changed depending on what period of the Roman Empire you're talking about. So that alone, a film like Gladiator 2 or Dune or something like that, or Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, should win over a film such as Moonlight, for example, or La La Land, or anything that is set in the present. I'd even say The Brutalist, because that's a period piece. A lot of that clothing is still accessible, and it's much easier to look up. There's photos and stuff of it where there's no photos from the Roman Empire or the medieval day or Middle Earth. And going back to what I was saying about the Oscars being rigged, I mean, what criteria are they basing this off of? Because you would think a film like Dune or Lord of the Rings, where you've got to create different costumes and armor and clothing and a completely different look and coat of arms and ships and weapons for multiple different cultures in that universe, you'd think there's more effort going into that than there would be for a film like Anora or The Substance or something like that. But this is the Academy Awards after all, and they love to throw a curveball. So best costume goes to Wicked. Yes, it's fantasy, but I think the costumes in Dune would have been a bit harder, a bit more creative. Really, in my own personal opinion, I think if a film is sci-fi or fantasy based, you should just give them the Academy Award just because of the effort and all the elements that went into the design and creative process of the costumes. And I haven't seen Wicked, it doesn't particularly interest me. The costumes look good, but some of the costumes in Dune look a hell of a lot more complex and over the top. You had all those different armors and design elements from all the different cultures. You had the Atreides armor is completely different to the Harkonnens. Harkonnens is different to the Sardaukar. Sardaukar is different to the Fremen. The Emperor's clothes and all the royal gowns and clothes and shit worn by the princesses and the priest class is completely different to what the Fremen wear when they're in the caves and they're not wearing their still suits. Yeah, I don't see how that wins over something like Wicked or some other movie. I'm sure the costumes are good in Wicked. They do look pretty creative, but yeah, it's my own personal bias. So Wicked wins. I can't remember the guy that won. He was the first African American man to win an Oscar for Best Costume Design. He got a standing ovation, which I thought was a bit over the top. So this is about the fourth award in, and so far this has taken about the same amount of time as the opening performance and the comedy act. So it shows how fast the Oscars can actually go if they just stick to handing out the awards and talking about the films rather than trying to put on a concert and a comedy performance in under half an hour. Another thing I haven't mentioned is the narrator of the award show. It was a very familiar voice. I knew the voice, but I couldn't think of the name, and it was Nick Offerman. He was out the back narrating live, and he did a fantastic job. So next up is Best Original Screenplay. And they were pretty much all boring nominations of films I haven't even heard of or haven't seen. And yeah, once again, how do you pick fucking Best Original Screenplay? Best Adapted Screenplay is a bit different if it's been taken from a book. Like, you would naturally assume something like Dune or Lord of the Rings that have been adapted from very well-known books that have been around for a very long time would get nominated and should win, especially something like Lord of the Rings and Dune that have such complex themes. Because if anyone has watched the documentaries and behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings on the extended editions, you know how fucking hard that book was to adapt into a film, especially like Peter Jackson mentions in the extended editions when the elves are giving the unique items out to the Fellowship. How do you show Gimli asking for 3 hairs from Galadriel because he doesn't think he's worthy of anything from the elves? That's much easier to write than it is to put into a film. Dune is the same thing. It's been done before in the 80s with David Lynch's, how do I say it? And also rest in peace, David Lynch. That was a bit of a shock. He was my brother's favourite director. He loves Twin Peaks and anything David Lynch had done. So rest in peace to him. David Lynch's Dune, how do I say it, is an interesting film. It's a prime example of how not to make a movie off of a book. There's just too much unnecessary stuff shoved in there. Because the first Dune book is pretty big. There's a lot of complex themes and characters in it. And I think what Denis did with Dune and Dune 2, kind of splitting bits of the book into 2 pieces rather than trying to just mash it all into one 2-hour film, was a much better idea. And it also shows you how hard it is to adapt a film from a book. So, back to Best Original Screenplay. The nominations were pretty boring, and the Oscar went to Anora, a film I have never even fucking heard of. I don't even think it's out here. If it did come out here, I don't think it even registered on the radar. I'd never heard of it before the Academy Awards. I haven't seen a trailer for it or anything. And it's a story of a sex worker. How modern. Next year it'll be a film about an OnlyFans quote-unquote star. That'll be considered modern art or contemporary art, covering a topic that is relevant to today's society. So Anora wins for Best Original Screenplay, which I think is a bit of a joke. Sean Baker wins his first Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, and it won't be the last. So Best Original Screenplay is followed by Best Adapted Screenplay, and as I just mentioned, you would think Dune it would be a shoe-in and a prime example of an adapted screenplay. And every year there's movies based on books or poems or short stories or other movies that have been adapted, obviously, that you don't even know about. It surprises and doesn't surprise me sometimes when you see how many adapted films there are or screenplays there are per year. Obviously there has to be enough to fill up the nominee ballots every year. But so many of the adapted screenplays I've never even heard of before. It's also a pretty big field too. These are films from, I think, all over the world. I'm not sure if language has anything to do with them. So there's probably a lot of adapted books and stuff from overseas that the Western world isn't familiar with. So, who wins Best Adapted Screenplay? And this year I think it was a complete joke and it's completely rigged. Because Dune wasn't even nominated, which is a complete fucking crime to the adapted screenplay category. How can you have Dune 2 be nominated for Best Picture, Best Costume, Best Editing, all these other awards, and not have it nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, despite the fact that it's based off of the highest selling science fiction book in all of fucking history? It seems a bit fucking retarded to me. I don't think Dune was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay a couple of years ago either. It might have, I don't remember it. I don't think it won. It's like nominating Lord of the Rings for everything besides Best Adapted Screenplay. It's one of the most beloved books in history, and it doesn't get nominated. Doesn't make any fucking sense to me. So the winner of Best Adapted Screenplay went to Conclave, which is a win in its own right. Conclave was a fucking great movie. It won. It wouldn't have been an easy book to adapt either. There's a lot of complex ideas and dialogue in that film. But to snub Dune is just such a fucking criminal act by the Academy. It's nominated for Best Picture, as I said, but it doesn't get nominated for Best Director or Best Adapted Screenplay. It's like, what the fuck? You have two massive elements in that film that have been overlooked. And these are two very important elements in the filmmaking process that both contribute to the Best Picture nomination: screenplay and directing. And to snub both of them is a massive fuck you to not only the filmmakers of Dune, Denis Villeneuve in particular, but to the film going and loving public. It's such a fuck you act. It really pissed me off. How do you not nominate Denis for Best Director? And then to give it another snub and not even include it in the Best Adapted Screenplay. What is the harm with nominating them? At least they're getting some recognition, but to completely snub them from those categories that contributed to the Best Picture is fucking criminal. How do you not include Dune in Best Adapted Screenplay? And I'm going to go on about this because it's fucking criminal in my opinion. How do you not nominate the guy that directed the fucking film that is nominated for Best Picture overall? It doesn't make any fucking sense, and it's fucking stupid. How many more times can I say fucking in a sentence? In my opinion, it's insulting because you're just saying that, it's not even not good enough to get nominated. Why not nominate it? Even if it doesn't win, at least its name is up there and it's in the history books. The fact that you don't even recognize two massive factors that went into it is just, it's a fucking snub, and I'm going to stop, otherwise I'm going to be talking about this for the next 40 minutes. Another Best Adapted Screenplay I haven't mentioned was A Complete Unknown, based on the book. I think it's called Bob Goes Electric. I want to try to find that book. It'd be an interesting read. The movie's great. So, another Best Picture preview time, and this one was Emilia Perez. And under the new Trump administration, this could technically be called terrorism promotion. And this is something I haven't mentioned yet. how the fuck did this film even get nominated? It's obviously a woke political correctness, virtue signaling nomination. There's no fucking way, after everything I've heard about this film, it can be considered in the same league as the rest of the other films that have been nominated, well, most of them anyway. How does a film about a transgender cartel boss, that's also a musical, one, warrant the production budget to make it in the first place, let alone get Zoe Saldana, Selena Gomez, and whoever the fuck else is in it, one, on the cast, and two, how does it get to the level where it gets nominated by the fucking Academy? And not only that, it gets nominated for 13 Academy Awards, which is on par with Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Titanic, and Gone with the fucking Wind. How does this woke joke of a fucking film get that many nominations? If the Academy's merits are based on fairness and artistic prowess, simple answer, it's fucking rigged. Emilia Perez getting 13 Oscar nominations is the most obvious piece of evidence that the Academy is completely rigged. Fuck 10 Ways from Sunday and does not give two fucks about creative or artistic integrity anymore. It's all about woke politics. Diversity and inclusion and whatever other social movement is popular in any particular year. Because 10 years ago, there's no way this film would even be considered. It'd be laughed out of a meeting. Fast forward 10 years and it's nominated for 13 Academy Awards. Now, if you remember back to 2004, so 20 years ago, when Return of the King won 11 or 10 Academy Awards out of the 13 it was nominated for, Peter Jackson and the filmmakers of Lord of the Rings had to go through an absolute shitfight to even have it nominated, because the Academy would say, oh, no, we don't nominate fantasy films because they're not dramatic enough. Lord of the Rings changed the game. And so far it's been the only fantasy film to win an Academy Award, to my knowledge. Dark Knight in 2008, same thing. Oh, it's a superhero film, so why can't fantasy and superhero films be dramatic enough or meet the criteria of the Academy? You literally have a fucking musical 20 years later about a transgender cartel boss where the songs are fucking ridiculous and they don't even sound good, and yet a film like this gets nominated for 13 Academy Awards. Something smells a bit fishy to me, and once again, this is proof, I think, that the Academy is 130 million% rigged. Because 10 to 20 years ago, this film would not get a fucking look in. I don't think even 10 years ago that a film like that would even get made, let alone 13 Academy Award nominations. And yet Dune got snubbed for so many blatantly obvious categories that it should have been included in. Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay being two of them. We've got through a decent chunk of the awards in, under an hour. And now it's time for Conan to return. He's dressed in a blue suit. It looked pretty cool. There's a pretty funny Bill Skarsgård, however you pronounce his name, and Andy Serkis joke. Best hair and makeup is always it's always a hard category, because like I said about sci-fi and fantasy movies, you kind of think that this is the category where they shine and would have a chance to win, and they should really be the standout, especially fantasy. And once again, going back to Lord of the Rings, look at all the prosthetics and makeup that was needed for most of the cast, the elves, the dwarves. I think the human characters were the only ones that didn't have too much makeup. The orcs, the Uruk-hai, all those actors that had to be in those suits. And that's what made that movie so great. Today it would just be like the Hobbits movies in 2012. They were all digital. They didn't look the same. They weren't as scary. They were just digital creations as opposed to actors in suits. So this year you'd think the big standout would be Nosferatu. Bill Skarsgård had to pretty much go in a full bodysuit for that. The makeup in that and effects in that film are incredible. But the Academy loves to throw out curveballs, and this year best makeup and hair went to The Substance. The Substance, I haven't seen it. It does look like it has some pretty impressive makeup and effects. And once again, how do you draw the line? The technical categories seem like the most honest categories in the Oscars. It seems like it should be pretty hard to bribe your way into an award, or to be rigged for that matter. These are the categories that should be based on the artistic merit of the artist and a certain amount of criteria, or however the fuck they choose. They're completely devoid of politics or any type of social causes. It's all about the art form that contributed to the filmmaking process. But even in these categories, I'm still surprised with some of the winners. In previous years, some of the hair and makeup has gone to some of the most basic movies, contemporary movies where it seems like a amateur or very inexperienced makeup and hair artist should be able to do their job pretty competently. And you have other films where just look at some of the hairstyles and stuff, you think, fucking hell, how did they come up with that? How did they do that? Sci-fi and fantasy movies do this better than anyone. And yeah, Dune, I think, probably should have won. There's a lot of prosthetics in that. Austin Butler had to have a prosthetic head because he couldn't shave his head because he was still doing reshoots for Elvis or something at the time, or another movie where he needed his hair. And he had to have a skull cap placed over his head, but they had to do it in a way that made his head rounder and bigger, and it's completely seamless. You couldn't tell that he had his hair underneath that. It was done so perfectly, and yeah, the substance wins. Maybe it deserved to win. I don't know, I haven't seen the film. I wouldn't mind. But the substance does look like it has some pretty impressive visual effects where they made Demi Moore look like an old zombie, which is not an easy thing to do. Amelia Perez is also nominated in that category, and yeah, that doesn't look like it has the most impressive makeup and hair. I don't think I'll be watching that movie anytime soon or ever. So at this point in the Oscars, there have been no woke wins, really, which was a nice surprise. So next up presenting was Halle Berry, and she is looking hotter than ever. And this led into a nice James Bond tribute. And obviously, Halle Berry was a former Bond girl. She was in Die Another Day, the last Pierce Brosnan film. So this leads into the James Bond musical tribute, which was pretty good. But at the same time, it's also really sad because this is about the same time the Bond franchise has been sold to Amazon, despite the producers saying they wanted to keep it purely theatrical. They wanted to keep the integrity of Bond and not sell it to a streaming company. Fast forward a couple of years and they eventually folded to Amazon, which is probably a better choice than Netflix because that means there'd be no more James Bond films coming out on Blu-ray or DVD, which means Bond fans like myself could never truly have a complete collection. I've collected the Bond films on VHS, DVD, and now on Blu-ray, so I'm hoping there isn't another physical media format change anytime soon because I don't really want to pay $300 to get them all again. Bond films have to come out as physical copies, so yeah, hopefully Amazon does that. Amazon's a physical media company. A lot of their TV shows come out to buy. They make books, so yeah, why wouldn't Bond? But at the same time, it's sad. MGM and United Pictures, I think, have pretty much gone under. It does show you where the future's going, especially for film studios. I don't think there's going to be too many smaller ones left. I think you're just going to have the giants like Fox and Universal and Paramount and the real independent ones left. I don't think a lot of those mid-level studios are going to survive, not unless something drastically changes within streaming and in the industry as a whole, I think. And does this mean Bond isn't going to be released theatrically? I hope not. I hope Bond films are always going to be in the cinema. That's where Bond films deserve to be seen, on the big screen and not on fucking TV. I don't want any spin-off TV shows or spin-off movies. Just make fucking decent James Bond films. Don't ruin it and make it go woke like it was going to go. Yeah, it's sad, and it's also, it's a bit concerning where the future of Bond is going to go. I got a feeling that Amazon's going to try to milk every fucking cent out of this. They'll have TV shows, books, several spin-off movies that lead into TV shows, kind of like what Marvel has done. I got a feeling that's where the series is heading, and pretty much Bond as we know it is dead and gone. The mashup of Bond theme songs was good, except for the horrific Bond dance they did. I thought that was over the top. I will say the person that sung Skyfall, which is one of my favourite Bond songs, fucking butchered it. It was cringy. Just pay Adele the money to come out and sing it. I have never even heard of half the singers. Actually, I don't think I've even heard of any of the singers that came out to sing those songs. Don't think the singing was particularly that good. They should have picked maybe artists that were more on the Bond level. So moving ahead, one thing I did really like about this year's Oscars, and actually shows the Academy does care about films in a way, was all the anti-streaming references and Conan's Cinema Stream skit, which had an appearance by Martin Scorsese, which is pretty funny because he's been a huge critic of streaming services, and he's one of the few big directors that hasn't sold out. Spielberg has talked out about it, but then got a contract from one of the streaming services. I did like the little movie they played with, you can go to a building and watch a movie on a screen the size of 8,000 smartphones. And that woman says, "Oh, how do you play it? Don't worry about that. We do that for you. All you have to do is buy a ticket. You can buy yourself some snacks that barely pass the Food Administration's guidelines or something like that." That's pretty funny. It was good to see the Academy finally standing up for theatrically released films and the theatre experience. Because in recent years, the Academy has really bowed to the streaming services, first by letting them have their films nominated, like Netflix. I think Roma, whatever it was called, Roma, was one of the first Netflix films to be nominated for an Academy Award, and it won. So how much money did Netflix throw at the Academy? The only consolation was they had to release it for 2 weeks theatrically to meet the criteria. There is that theatrical criteria, so if a streaming service does want to release a film to be nominated, it has to come out in theatres for 2 weeks. But it was good they actually had a little bit of backbone and stood up for cinemas, because so many have closed during COVID and in the last few years with the rise of streaming services. And recently, I think Netflix has proposed building a theatre where they play their TV shows and movies, which seems like double dipping to me and completely stupid, because I'm not going to go pay to watch Stranger Things in a theatre when I can watch it in my living room. I mean, I've paid them the monthly fee, so why would I go pay them again? It seems like, double dipping in the pond. So next up was Daryl Hannah. It's been 20 years of Kill Bill. Yeah, it's gone quick. I remember seeing the second one in the cinema. Preferred the first one, I think. She presented the award for Best Editing. She gave her little expression of support for Ukraine. I had a feeling the Ukrainian war was going to be mentioned at least once. I didn't see too many blue and yellow ribbons this year as opposed to other years. I suppose we can't have an award show in the modern era without there being some acknowledgement to some type of political or global event. And as we all know, editors are the real heroes of the film industry. And Best Editing is, once again, one of those big technical awards, which is literally the heart and soul of the filmmaking process. And Dune and The Complete Unknown were nominated. Both films were very well edited, in my opinion. But the award goes to Anora. A modern film about a sex worker really compare to an epic like Dune or a biopic like A Complete Unknown or Conclave or any of those films? And I think it's around this point too, you can really tell that Anora is going to be the film that is favoured by the Academy, or the film that had the best campaign and threw the best parties this year. It became very clear around this point when Anora wins another Academy Award. So this is Sean Baker's second Academy Award for the night, because he wrote, directed, produced and edited the film. It became very clear that Anora was going to be the film that the Academy just favoured and hammered into the ground this year. Yeah, it's an independent film. It's a big win for independent cinema, but at the same time, does it really deserve to win compared to other films like Dune, Complete Unknown? Is this criteria based for editing? Because I imagine editing a film like Dune would have been really fucking hard compared to a film like Anora. I guess editing any film is hard, but yeah, come on, you can't tell me that Anora's got better editing than A Complete Unknown or Dune or Conclave or Freddy Fucks Himself 3. What are they basing the criteria on? And is this purely because the producers of Anora went on a better campaign trail than the producers of Dune? Yeah, who knows? I did read a interesting statistic, I think it was on Movie Boner's Instagram, that Anora only had a budget of about $13 million, but they spent like $60 million or $100 million on campaigning and advertising of the film. So it's like, can you really call yourself an independent film where your marketing budget is 10 times what your production budget is? Because this is a thing that Disney does epically bad. They'll make a movie for $350 million, they spend $200 or $250 million making it and another $150 million selling and marketing it, only for the film to completely flop and make their production budget and a bit of the marketing costs back, which in other words is a complete and utter commercial failure. So Anora wins again, and this is the favourite film for this year. Mercifully, Sean Baker gave a pretty short speech. I think he pretty much said everything for his first win, and this leads into Best Supporting Actress, probably the second bigger, not more important, but more of the more glitzy awards. Once again, Best Supporting Actresses from previous years came out and do the ego-stroking intros, one of which being the very over-the-top Ariana Grande. I mean, she was very ridiculous. It's hard to take her seriously. Is she just that nice and that genuine? Because she seems a little over the top to me. I think she called Cynthia fearless and brilliant. It's funny because the best supporting actors don't call the other supporting actors fearless and brilliant. It seems to be only the best actress. And it's very fucking cringy. They're strong, independent, and brave, and yada, yada, yada. So, the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress goes to Terrorism Propaganda. Emilia Perez. Zoe Saldana wins. It's her first award nomination and award win, and yeah, this one I do not agree with. I haven't seen the film. I don't think I've seen any of the films nominated apart from maybe one. I think Conclave maybe was the only one I had actually seen. Zoe Saldana is also the first crying winner of this year. It was a very cringy speech. She said she likes to sing and dance, and it was the first film where she got the opportunity to sing and dance in her own native Spanish language or something like that. She had a very cringy speech, and I actually really like Zoe Saldana. She's in two of my favourite modern sci-fi franchises, Star Trek and Avatar. I've liked her for a long time. I've always enjoyed her movies, but yeah, I think I'm going to give this one a hard pass. Maybe she does deliver a good performance, but it seems like virtue signalling to me. She made a big deal about singing in Spanish despite being born in New Jersey. Yeah, I just hate that fucking, I get to sing this. I've been so oppressed all my life. Sorry, you've had a pretty good fucking life. You've been in massive movies. You have millions of dollars. You have a much better life than most people. I got the feeling from her acceptance speech that she's a little bit entitled and that this is the first opportunity she got to do it, so that's why she did the film. Which seemed a bit disingenuous because she's had such a good fucking career. She's had a very successful career. Like I said, 3 massive sci-fi franchises: Avatar, Star Trek, Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like, what fucking more do you want? She's been in tons of action films. She's a versatile actress. She's one of my favourite actresses. And she's making this big deal about fucking singing and dancing in Spanish. We could always move to Mexico or to Latin America, to Spain, and you could disregard Hollywood and go full-time in the Spanish film industry, and you won't have a problem. Saldana's acceptance speech also went on way too long. I love how the technical categories, the non-pretty people, get the marching orders when the music comes up, but a lot of the actors and directors can just waffle on for 5 minutes and the music doesn't get queued up.
I'm Mandy.
And I'm Avery.
We're the hosts and creators of Thick Thighs and Creepy Vibes.
Join us as we take a deep dive into the macabre and the unexplained.
Listen every Wednesday as we take you on a chilling journey that transports you to all corners of the Great White North.
Let's boot those Sunday scaries while we take a rip into the harrowing tales of the haunted and the supernatural phenomena that defy explanation.
So grab your ketchup chips
and your Caesars and make sure to
creep it real.
So after this, Ben Stiller takes the stage. He was presenting the award for Best Production Design. There was a bit of a gag to go with it, with a floor. He stood on a platform when it went down and it didn't quite go back up, so he had to climb out of it. It was kind of funny. Ben Stiller's become less funny in the past decade. His humour's got a bit stale. He's always trying to do the same thing. I don't think he's quite worked out that the world's moved on from Meet the Parents 1 and Something About Mary. And I thought Mr. Stiller had moved to Canada again. I thought last time Trump took office he was going to move to Canada. I guess he couldn't refuse the money. Production design is another category like best visual and special effects and some of the more technical categories that you think would be a shoo-in for science fiction and fantasy films. And this year that kind of came true. Wicked takes out the Oscar for best production design. Another slap in the face for Dune. I thought Dune had this in the bag, given the massive production design for this film. It's a big epic sci-fi film. Once again, all the cultures and the different races in that film all have their own unique production design. And I guess that wasn't enough to win. It goes to Wicked. I'm sure Wicked has some great production design. It's got some colourful, interesting looking set design. I'm not sure it can quite compete with Dune though, but it's better than Emilia Perez or Anora or some contemporary film winning. And Nathan Crowley wins for Best Production Design. He's worked with Christopher Nolan several times on The Dark Knight. He was the production designer, I'm pretty sure, on that, and some of our other Nolan's films. So after this, Mick Jagger staggers out into stage. He was umming and ahhing a lot, which is a bit surprising for a guy that's been in the spotlight for so long. So he comes out to present Best Original Song. I think most of the songs this year have sucked. And Best Original Song went to that terrorist propaganda film, Emilia Perez. And when you hear that song, it sounds fucking dreadful. Now, I thought Wicked was going to win this, given that it is a musical, as I suppose Emilia Perez is as well, but not quite the same caliber. The songs in Perez sound retarded, and they're laden full of shock value just for the sake of it. The P&V song being the best example of that. And a really cool bullshit on that, because Emilia Perez was nominated for 2 songs in the one category, which doubles its chances of winning. Now, how is that fucking fair to any of the other nominees? Shouldn't they all have 2 songs nominated? Because you can't tell me there's 2 songs in that film that are worth a fucking Oscar nomination. You can't tell me there's 1 song in that film that's worth an Oscar nom, let alone 2. So that's a fucking absolute bullshit, rigged fucking category. And I've never seen another film with 2 songs nominated, not that I can remember anyway. And there's been some great musicals over the years, and I don't recall many of them, not in the last 20 or so years. So that is absolute fucking bullshit. There's a bit of a political message from the winners. It's a Netflix film after all, so what can you expect? I didn't realise that this atrocity of film was produced by Netflix, but then again, that shouldn't really surprise anybody. I mean, Netflix has got more shit films than they do good. They're kind of known for making crap films at this point. But really, how many of them are actually that good? The Woman, and I think the guy that won for Best Original Song were thanking Netflix and being very cringy during the speech. And they also started singing at the end of it, which was embarrassing because the woman couldn't sing, but surprisingly, she's a musician. So Kimmel takes the stage again. He made a very funny Drake and Kendrick Lamar joke. A lot of that I'm only just finding out about. Might have to do an episode on the Drake-Kendrick beef, because the Super Bowl halftime show was pretty funny. Pretty much calling him out on national television in front of, 1.3 billion people. And this is where we get the second appearance of the guy dressed up as the sandworm, and to me at this point, it seems like the Academy is just taking the piss out of Dune. It's pretty much what they've done all night. They've snubbed it. I don't think it's really won anything up until now. And now you have the sandworm trying to play percussion in the orchestra. It seemed like they were making a joke out of science fiction. I don't understand why. Out of all the movies they had, there was plenty of them to take the piss out of. Emilia Perez being the obvious one. Anora. And yet they choose to snub a sci-fi film and then rub salt in the wounds by making a joke out of one of the central elements of the film being the sandworm. I mean, no one is taking the piss out of Anora. No one's hiring prostitutes to run up and down the aisles. So next award up is Best Documentary Feature, I'm pretty sure. And this is one of the most interesting categories I find. I've seen a couple of the documentaries that have won over the years and they're pretty good. You never hear about these films anywhere else, and I don't even know where you'd even see half of them because they don't play them in theatres. You might find them on a streaming service in 6 months' time. But I have very rarely ever seen any of those documentaries to buy or watch outside of the Oscars. So I always try to take note and write down the names of them to see if I can find them. Selena Gomez and someone else present the best documentary. And the winner goes to The Oldest Girl in the Orchestra. Looks like an interesting film. Once again, I think some of the documentary categories have some of the most interesting films of the year. And I don't think they get enough credit. And I suppose being nominated gets a name out there and encourages people to see them because you never know half of these films even existed. And that was produced by pretty much an all-female team. The main woman pretty much does all the talking and cuts the co-winners out of speaking, which really fucking annoys me when people do that. Everyone who's on that stage should have at least 30 seconds to say something, a couple of thank yous. It shouldn't just be an overall time limit for the whole group, because some people, whether it's just shock or if it's they see the lights and they kind of they think they have to keep talking. Some of them talk a bit too long, but it's a bit unfair especially when this happened this year. Someone went to say something and they had cut the mic off, and then he's up there looking like an idiot trying to thank people, and he only wanted to say like a couple of thanks to probably people who've supported him, and he was completely stopped from doing that. That's a moment you're never ever going to get back. If anyone from the Academy is listening, cut out the music, cut down the previews, cut out all the songs, cut down the comedy show, and then wrap the Oscars up in 2.5 hours and let everybody have at least 30 seconds. Maybe start cutting the actors' acceptance speeches down and the pretty people, and you'll have a much tighter formatted show. And you could probably cut out all the political shit, and it might actually be worth watching again. So next up is Best Feature Documentary. So Oldest Girl in the Orchestra must have been Best Documentary Short. So Best Documentary Feature. And once again, there's some very interesting stories in these categories. The Oscar goes to No Other Land, which is a Palestinian film. Is this because it was the best film, or is this a political message? Who knows? But I guess it shines a light on a very complex and current issue. It does look like a good film as well. I'll have to say most of the political messaging was pretty positive. It didn't really point the finger at any type of political party. It was more about peace and unity and people coming together as humans and not members of different tribes or different sides of a political faction. Because the filmmakers behind No Other Land were a combination of Palestinian and Israeli filmmakers. And the Israeli guy highlights that we both pretty much live in the same country. He has guaranteed rights where his co-filmmakers don't actually have their own country and are basically subjugated under military law at the moment. And I don't think I have to go too much into that. So that was a nice message of unity. And after that, we get a intro to one of the Academy members. This is a very rare occurrence where Academy members show their face and come out from their ivory towers. So the next segment is they had firefighters and first responders who were involved in the LA wildfires come out on stage to present some awards. Some of them were naturals. There was one woman who seemed a little nervous. I probably would be in that category as well, if I'm honest. I don't know if any of them would have thought at the beginning of the year they'd be standing on the stage at the Academy Awards. And after all, the firefighters are the real heroes, so why shouldn't they have a stage to stand on? The LA wildfires in recent weeks have also really gone out of the media, I should say in recent months, so it was good to get a reminder that there's still thousands of people without homes and power and stuff like that. So next up is Best Sound, and this was presented by Miles Teller and Miley Cyrus. Don't mind both of them. Miles Teller seems like a cool guy. Also another interesting category, a hard category. How do you judge who has the best sound? Once again, sci-fi movies do this better than most others. So do action films. There's a lot of noises. You have to find a lot of new noises in a lot of these films. I'm not sure a movie like a kitchen sink drama has too many over-the-top sounds in it. And surprisingly, Dune wins. This is the first award for Dune of the night. Are Dune's fortunes about to turn around? Or is this just a little consolation for being snubbed 5 times already? And it's about fucking time that Dune 2 got some recognition. Just critically and commercially, it was probably the most successful film of last year. The Academy just completely pissed all over it, like they usually do. They never seem to pick films that people actually go to see. They'll pick a movie like Coda that, even today, I have never seen on a streaming service or in the shops to buy. It wasn't in the cinema, so how can this Oscar-winning film from 2022 just seemingly disappear? Does anyone actually remember that film? I don't remember it coming out in the cinema. Power of the Dog, another Netflix-produced film, that disappeared. I think that was the same year. I don't think that won Best Picture. It won Best Director, I'm pretty sure. Fucking what was last year? Oppenheimer. What was the year before that? Can't fucking remember. So plowing ahead. So it's about fucking time that Dune actually won something. I like how Timothée Chalamet was so supportive of everybody around him. He's giving high fives to the sound guys as they walk past, which was a nice acknowledgement. He seems like a very supportive and cool guy. if you worked on the film, I think he'd be rooting for you, even if you weren't working on his film, because he was there, obviously not for his work in Dune, but for a complete unknown. This is the first time in the awards that Denis Villeneuve, the mastermind and director of Dune and Dune 2, got a shout out. There was 3 guys accepting the award, and a third guy once again had the mic cut and didn't get to talk. So next award up is the Best Visual Effects. There were some great nominations in this one, and once again, this is a hard one. Visual effects make up such a dominant part of modern films. And I'll say it again, sci-fi fantasy should be a shoo-in in this category. And the award goes to Dune Part 2. So this is 2 in a row for Dune. Once again, Timothée Chalamet's congratulating the guys that won. So this is a little consolation for snubbing Denis. Dune's got some pretty impressive effects. The scenes with the sandworms in it are epic, and they look so realistic. So next award up is live action short. There's some interesting films in this category as well. And once again, you don't see them all that often, apart from being mentioned in the Oscars. And this went to I Am Not a Robot. It was a Dutch couple presented the award. It was kind of sweet. They didn't get a hell of a lot of time to talk like a lot of these categories. So after that came the somber part of the Oscars, which was the In Memoriam presented by Morgan Freeman, who seems to be wearing a glove on one hand again. I'm pretty sure he wore one last year for some injury. And obviously the big focal point of this year was Gene Hackman, who passed away a couple of weeks or a week before the Oscars. There's been some pretty big names lost in the last year. And I always think this is one of the areas of the Oscars that should be extended, because there's always that little message after the In Memoriam saying, if you want to see the full list of people in memoriam, head on over to theoscars.com. So cut out other stuff and put more focus on this. This is important. These people worked in that industry. Don't they deserve a final moment of recognition? Because obviously Gene Hackman's a big name, and you don't know how you could have a year where a lot of people pass away. One year it might not be so many, but there's a couple of surprising ones on this list as well. Some younger people as well, which I hadn't even heard of. I always think personally there should be more focus on the In Memoriam than all the pointless glitz and glamour and all the songs and stuff that we don't really need to hear. You can always look that up on YouTube. So after the In Memoriam comes one of my favourite categories, Best Cinematography. And cinematographers like editors, everybody knows, are the heart and soul and the true heroes of the film industry. Australia's Greg Fraser was nominated again for his work on Dune Part 2. Those black and white monochromatic scenes in the arena were pretty fucking stunning. When I first saw that, I was like, how the fuck did they do that? There's a scene where the princess is talking to the Baron inside, and it's all colour, and they go out into the sun to watch the games, and it's just this monochromatic filter kind of takes out all the light. It was a very interesting technique. I had to look up how he pulled that off. So Bautista took the stage to present Best Cinematography. He looks really fucking skinny, and that's saying something, but I guess when you're like over 300 pounds and you cut down to like 250, which is about my weight, you do look skinny. And the Oscar went to The Brutalist. Dune got snubbed again. Greg Fraser has won an Oscar before, but that's no excuse either. Just because you've won an Oscar for cinematography for one film doesn't mean you shouldn't win for the sequel. I don't like that argument about the Academy Awards. Well, if you've won an Academy Award before, you shouldn't win it again. It should go to somebody else. The Oscars, in theory, should be about the best film, the best actors, the best directors of that year, not any other external or political factor. And it shouldn't matter whether you have won one Oscar or 10 Oscars. If you are the best at something or have produced the best film or the best performance, you should win, shouldn't you? Regardless if you've won the year before or 10 years before that, because that goes back to something I covered a couple of years ago about Martin Scorsese. He should have won the best director for a few films, and then they pretty much gave him a consolation apology Oscar for, I think he won for The Departed, but he really should have won for other films going right back to the 80s. Goodfellas being one of them. The Academy deemed it too violent to win Best Film, which is fucking stupid, because what does it matter whether the film is violent or not violent, or has nudity or doesn't have nudity? it should be the best overall film. And if you can take a violent film like Goodfellas and turn it into an Oscar-worthy film, though, regardless of the content of the film, doesn't that just prove Martin Scorsese was the best director of that year, because he could take a violent story about mafia figures and turn it into a work of art in a way that wasn't excessively violent or, what's the word I'm looking for, gratuitous in any way, because it's not. The violence is part of the world, and I like when directors like Martin Scorsese can take violence or whatever and they use it as part of the story, and it's not gratuitous or just violence for violence sake like some action films, because the world the characters like Henry Hill in that inhabit is a very violent and dark one. How he could take that and turn it into an entertaining film that's a great film shows he's a master director, doesn't it? And then he gets an award, finally gets an Academy Award for Best Director like 20 years later, probably for the wrong film. Maybe he didn't win for The Departed. I'm going to look that up. So he won Best Director in 2007 for The Departed. He's been nominated a lot, as I've covered before. Best Director, Best Picture, Killers of the Flower Moon 2024. Best Director nominee, The Irishman. Best Picture, The Irishman 2014, The Wolf of Wall Street. So a movie like that wouldn't win because it's too hedonistic and shines a light on a very scummy world of investment. The Aviator, yeah, you could argue that he probably should have won for that because that's a fucking good movie. It's not his best film, but it's a very interesting film, having that sepia, old-fashioned colour make up a huge amount of that movie. It really puts you back into the 1920s and 30s. Other than Raging Bull, Best Director, that doesn't win. I haven't actually seen Raging Bull yet, so I don't know if that would have been worthy of an Oscar. But out of all those films, I think Goodfellas is the one he probably should have won for, and a lot of other people do as well. Then 2007, he gets the Apology Oscar. I mean, I can't remember what came out in 2020, but yeah, The Irishman, Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah, they're long movies and they're produced by streaming services, but they're still fucking good. Maybe they were too long, who knows? Those two films aren't particularly violent. The Irishman is a fucking solid film, so is Killers of the Flower Moon. Might be a bit inflated, so I don't know, does that knock down the Best Directing Oscar points because you made a film that's a bit bloated? Yeah, but then again, Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer's the better film. Tells a big, important story. Great performances. It's historical, and it's a subject that no one's really covered, where, maybe The Irishman, Scorsese's made lots of mob criminal movies, so, yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm just waffling shit now. So back to the awards. So The Brutalist wins. Greg Fraser misses out. I haven't seen The Brutalist, so I can't comment on the cinematography. I'm sure it's good if it won. Yeah, I just think the best artist should win, regardless of how many times they've been nominated or won before. One final thing I'll say for Greg Fraser is he had to come up with a new technique to film the monochromatic scenes, but they used thermal cameras to get the colour and the blackness in the mouth when characters talk outside, because the whole premise was the Harkonnens' world, Getty Prime, has a black sun that absorbs light, so you have to think of a way in a technique that would show colour being sucked out of the world and not just black and white, not just a filter, in other words. So you have to figure out a way to pull that off, which I think he did pretty fucking well, so it's a whole new technique. And I guess that wasn't enough. So next up is Best Foreign Film, presented by Penelope Cruz, who again is looking pretty good. I haven't seen her in anything in a very long time. And that went to I'm Still Here. Edward Norton has a bit of a handshake fail. He went to congratulate the filmmakers who had to walk up the aisle. He got the handshake snub. I don't think the guy saw him. So after this, Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, takes the stage to present Best Score, or Best Original Score. Now you'd think Dune would be a shoo-in, considering the legend himself, Hans Zimmer, did the score for it. He's, I think, probably the best composer in the world at the moment. He has been for probably the last 20 years. I don't think any two of his soundtracks sound the same. They have the same kind of vibe, but they're always dramatically different. But I don't think Dune was even nominated. I can't remember. But anyway, the award goes to The Brutalist and the awkward-looking vampire guy that composed the score. Next up was the Quincy Jones tribute. So now we're getting to the business end of the awards. Next up is Best Actor, followed by Best Actress, Best Picture, and Best Director. Or Best Director, Best Picture. So Cillian Murphy presented the Best Actor award. Once again, like the previous awards for Best Supporting Actor and Actress, all the ass-kissery has to be gone through first. So this year it's a pretty tough competition, like it is most years with Best Actor and Actress. The margin seems to be pretty slim, which reminds me of Brendan Fraser's win a couple of years ago. Still haven't seen The Whale, haven't seen it on a streaming service or DVD anywhere. Once again, what the fuck happened to that movie? Like a lot of people say about his Oscar win, was it more so an apology from Hollywood for the way he's being treated? Or was he the best overall actor of that year? Because I will argue Austin Butler probably should have won for Elvis, but hey, that's just my opinion. So, tough competition. Got my fingers crossed for Timothée Chalamet at this point. He was my favourite performance of the year. I do like Chalamet though, so I'm a bit biased. I do like Adrian Brody as well. Sebastian Stan got nominated for that Trump movie, which I think was in the theatres here for about a week. I wanted to see it, but it disappeared. Surprised that got nominated because of the Trump subject material. But hey, maybe this is a new Academy. Maybe they don't care about political affiliation and they just care about the best performance. I'm still going to need some convincing of that it's not a political woke joke. Or maybe they do this just to throw people off so people like me come back and watch it year after year. So the Oscar goes to Adrian Brody, the second Oscar win for Mr. Brody. Yeah, I haven't seen The Brutalist, so I don't know. His performance in The Pianist was pretty incredible. What was that, 2004? It's a good fucking movie. And once again, this also goes against what the Academy usually does and not award 2 Academy Awards to the same artist. Because by that definition, then shouldn't Greg Fraser have won for Best Cinematography? Why all the snubs to Martin Scorsese and directors like him? What I was getting at before is the Oscars would have you believe that they're an award show based on the best artist or contribution to the industry of that year and not a fairness award. But year after year, they snub someone because they have an Oscar or have been nominated several times over somebody who hasn't for diversity or fairness sake. So you can't really take them that seriously. But Adrian Brody was probably well-deserved. I haven't seen The Brutalist, as I mentioned. I would like to. I have to wait and hope it comes out on Blu-ray. But I was secretly hoping Chalamet was going to win. The gum tossing to his wife was a little weird. I didn't think it was as bad as what people made it out to be. I mean, why didn't he just put it in the back of his mouth or his tongue or swallow it? It's not like you're going to choke chewing gum. He was chewing it so his mouth didn't go dry, which is understandable. So maybe he knew he was going to win. Interesting. Could have tucked it into the back of the mouth. Yeah, I'm not sure he needed to throw it to his wife. But then again, if he had have just stuck it under the chair too, people would have been making a big deal about that as well. Now, the next problem with Mr. Brody was his historically long acceptance speech. There was a nice message in it about peace and unity, and I did like what he said about not letting hate go unchecked and how we have to put these things back into check and into balance when situations or leaders around the world want to encourage violence or upheaval, because he's won 2 Oscars for the victims of war, as he said. And he beat the longest speech by a couple of seconds. So was he just trying to drag it on so he could get that record? But overall, it was a decent speech. For once, it wasn't just about himself and about, oh, God put me in this position and thanks the Academy and this and that. It was a bit more universal. So next up is Best Director, and this is presented by Quentin Tarantino, and it went to Anora. And this is Sean Baker's 3rd win, and at this point I was like, fucking really? Where the fuck was Denis Villeneuve? Arguably one of the best directors of the last 20 years. I would say Denis Villeneuve and Christopher Nolan are the two best directors currently working at the moment. Besides Martin Scorsese and probably Steven Spielberg. Spielberg hasn't done anything in a while. Ready Player One was good. What was that, 2018? Hasn't done much since then. He's not making Raiders of the Lost Ark or Schindler's List, so he hasn't done anything that's been too outstanding. Ridley Scott, I'm convinced, has lost a lot of what made his film special. Gladiator 2, it's an entertaining film, doesn't hold a candle to the first one. Not sure it really needed a sequel, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. But how the fuck does Denis Villeneuve not get nominated for arguably the best movie of the year, in my opinion, and probably the best film of the last 10 years? This goes back to that age-old question. How do you get nominated for Best Picture and not Best Director? And that is like going to a restaurant, having the best meal you've ever had, and not acknowledging the chef who made it. It's the same exact fucking thing. How do you have a film nominated for Best Picture but not nominated Director? Any film that is nominated for Best Picture should have the director automatically nominated for Best Director. One follows the other. You couldn't have Best Picture without Best Director. If it warrants a Best Picture, the director by default should be acknowledged as well, considering him or her was the person that fucking made the film in the first place. I think it's completely fucking retarded that a film can be nominated for Best Picture and the director gets snubbed. And this is what happened with Denis. And the best Oscar went to Sean Baker. So he's now on his third award of the night, and it's completely obvious at this point that Anora was the contemporary film that focused on a minority group of society the Academy wanted to hammer into the ground. And this year's theme seems to be sex workers. Last year, I can't remember what it was. It was, fucking child groomers or something like that. So this year, sex workers have the honour of being the minority favoured by the Academy. And it was nearly time to turn the awards off, but, curiosity got the better of me. And once again, I'll go back to the quality of the art. How can you say that was better directed than The Brutalist or Dune or A Complete Unknown? Because you've got these veteran directors. Sean Baker has done a couple of things, but I know nothing really that special. How can you say that guy is a better director or did a better job directing than the guy that directed The Brutalist, James Mangold for A Complete Unknown, Denis, who was denied and not even included this year, over any other more experienced director? There's a female director nominated as well. I feel like that was a little unfair because she seemed like she was just the diversity pick for that year, and there was no real chance of her winning. The Academy just wanted to appear diverse and say, look at us, we include everybody, where there was really no hope that she was actually going to win. Because they didn't really seem to focus on her. It was all about Mangold, Sean Baker, and the guy that directed The Brutalist. I mean, I thought The Brutalist was going to win. It had been on a bit of a streak. And yeah, that's a huge fucking movie too. It's a big, complex film. Or James Mangold, he's been nominated a few times, but always seems to get snubbed as well. He's a great director. So yeah, once again, how do they meet the criteria? Is it artistic expression or who hosts the better party? One saving grace around this time was the Save the Theatre message, which I did like. I think the Academy especially needs to do more to get people to return to the theatre and experience films the way they should be in the big screen rather than just on a TV or a mobile phone at a bus stop somewhere. So, next award up is Best Actress. The nominees were a complete woke joke. They had a biological man pretending he's a woman who, I don't know, has transitioned or not. I don't know. I don't particularly fucking care. If that isn't a virtue signalling a diversity call, I don't know what the fuck is. It shows you how the Oscars has fallen so fucking hard and so fast in recent years. So this is probably going to start a trend for more people who, I don't know, aren't that good at acting, who want to call themselves male or female and get called by their preferred pronouns to get nominated for their own personal gain, like a lot of transgender athletes have. And if that's going to be the case, then just do away with the Best Actor and Best Actress and just make it Best Acting Performance like Movie Bonus does. What's the point in defining the sexes if the definition of said sex is ambiguous? What's the point in even having a male and female category if it isn't to define the genders or to define the different performances? Because that argument's been going around for a very, very long time. What's the difference between a male and female actor? They're both actors, aren't they? So why is there the definition between actor and actress? I think. But then that's also unfair, because if you just had the one best overall actor, well, yeah, how do you choose just one overall actor? Then you'd also have to acknowledge, which the Academy seems to have forgotten, there is a difference between biological men and women. And if they just had the one best overall actor award, and every year it went to a man or a woman, people would complain and say, well, you never fucking pick a woman or you never pick a man, and this is just sexist shit. So I think there has to be the definition. Otherwise, what would be the point? And a lot of people say, yeah, well, they're both actors, they shouldn't call them actresses. I think they have to for that definition. Otherwise, you'd have one sex taking out all the awards every year. And how do you define it? And that's the other thing, is women play certain characters as men play certain characters. A film like Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt plays the wife of Oppenheimer. You can't have Chris Hemsworth playing Oppenheimer's fucking wife and pretending he's a woman, because it doesn't work. In order to sell the movie, the performance, the drama, the fantasy of the film watching experience, you have to make it as realistic as possible, which means you'd have to have a biological woman playing the wife of Oppenheimer in this case. And you couldn't have a overweight Asian woman playing Oppenheimer, because then it wouldn't be believable. No matter how much we like to think about, oh, acting, you can play anything. You can to a point. If you're making a biopic about Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're not going to pick a skinny white dude with glasses. You're going to have to pick some buff dude that looked like him, because what's the point in trying to tell the story of a famous bodybuilder if you're just going to pick someone who has no muscle on them whatsoever, or isn't fit to play the world's greatest bodybuilder? There needs to be a fine line between believability and artistic license. And if you want trying to sell like a biopic like Oppenheimer or any type of movie, you have to buy in with the reality. And I think the more spectacular and the more fantastical a film is, like Harry Potter or a sci-fi film, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, the more realistic you have to make it. The more lived in you have to make the world, otherwise no one's going to believe it. And that's the difference between in sci-fi and fantasy specifically, is if you don't 100% buy in, your audience isn't buying in, and therefore you've failed in trying to tell your story. Because there's a lot of corny fantasy and sci-fi. It's either a cheap copy or an imitation of something, and people don't buy it. There's a lot of those corny sci-fi TV shows that are a little too clean. They just copied Star Wars or Star Trek. They don't quite seem realistic. The people don't have a passion for what they're doing, and it takes you out of the world, where the half the appeal of Star Wars and why it was so popular is it felt lived in. And that's the whole core thing that George Lucas wanted to create, was creating a realistic lived in world and not just a copy of something else. And I think I've gone off topic far enough, so let's go back to Best Actress. So last year's winner, Emma Stone, presents the award for Best Actress, and that goes to Anora and Mickey Madison. Never heard of her before, and I think this one is a huge slap in the fucking face to the other nominees apart from Emilia Perez. You have a young 20-something-year-old who I haven't heard of. I'm sure there's a lot of people that wouldn't know her from a bar of soap. Wins an Academy Award because she plays a sex worker and does a lot of nudity. So either the Academy is run by perverts, or they could see something in this movie that was brave and courageous. Because I think she even seemed a bit shocked, because there's a lot of great actresses in that category, Felicity Jones being one of them. Demi Moore looked a little annoyed, and I thought Demi Moore was going to get it personally, even if it was a apology Oscar for Hollywood snubbing her after she turned 40 and she wasn't getting any roles, or getting very few. And isn't that the whole backbone of The Substance? I know I haven't seen it, but it's about an older actress or something like that. It takes that green shit. I don't know what I'm talking about. So she looked a bit annoyed, and so did the woman from I'm Still Here. I thought, yeah, her or Demi Moore would have got it. I'm Still Here looks like a pretty good film too. It's a foreign film from Brazil, I'm pretty sure. So it's a bit of a shock, and yeah, it was painfully obvious that Anora was just the minority social cause film the Academy wanted to win. And yeah, I think this year more than ever. Well, I've known this for a while, but this year it was even more painfully obvious that this was just rigged. It wasn't based on any artistic merit whatsoever. It was just who could throw the best party and who could go on the best campaign trail. Because as I said, they spent 10 times on marketing than they did making this film. And it seemed like they made the cheapest independent film they could make for that money. Wanted to make a Oscar baitish kind of film, make it a bit edgier so it would get more attention, spend a whole bunch of money on publicity and marketing, and hope they win. And it paid off. Which if you go back and look at the marketing budgets around some of the films that win, I think you'd probably see a pretty obvious pattern form. So now we come down to the biggest award of the night. And that is the coveted Best Picture. Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal present. Haven't seen Meg Ryan or Billy Crystal in a long fucking time. There's 10 nominations for this year, including A Complete Unknown, Dune 2, Conclave, which I think probably all should have won Best Picture. If I had to choose one, it'd obviously be Dune 2, but only one can win. And the winner was Anora again. Sean Baker should have just moved up to the front seat or just sat by the stage to save himself some walking distance. He also would have had to hire security and someone to help him take all the Oscars to his car because he had so fucking many of them. It's a bit of a fucking joke, really. But I guess in the end, it was a win for independent cinema overall, which is good for cinema in general. Because I think a lot of people are sick of the $200 and $300 million Marvel and Disney blockbusters that are kind of just the same thing at this point. Massive special effects laden films that are just about superheroes and over-the-top explosions and a bunch of other CGI manifested fakeness. I think I'd rather go back and see films with real sets, real props like Oppenheimer. Especially in this day and age, it seems so foreign now. And if one good thing comes from this year's Oscars, maybe it's going to inspire more independent filmmakers or filmmakers to get a bit more creative and outside the box. It's also encouraging people to go back to the cinema and see independent films and just go back to the cinema in general. And that whole debate about AI special effects. I think in independent films, if you're trying to make a low-budget sci-fi film, I think AI could really make it stand out and go to the next level, especially if you have no budget. I think when big studios use it, it's a bit cheap and a bit insulting. I think it's a bit stingy too, considering they have all these resources at their disposal. They can make pretty much anything seem real, but they still try to cut corners by using AI, and I think it's pretty obvious, and they always get found out. So Anora wins again. Much better films get snubbed, and I think there's a definite agenda being driven by the Academy, as there seems to be in the last 12 years or so. But all in all, I think this was one of the most boring Oscars I've ever seen. It was dull, it was predictable, it was just flat out lame. There weren't really a lot of curveballs or shocks. You kind of knew who was going to win. And after a while, when you saw the trend, you kind of, it was very easy to predict who was going to win. Last year it was Poor Things. That was the quirky film. They got favoured. Ultimately, it lost out to Oppenheimer, and rightfully so, because I really don't think the Academy can be taken seriously if they snubbed Oppenheimer, especially in the Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Supporting Actor categories. I also think Emily Blunt should have won for Best Supporting Actress. She was by far a million miles ahead of the other nominees. Emilia Perez was obviously the joke nomination for this year. There always seems to be one, especially in the recent Academy Awards. That film that is just so ridiculous and so over the top, it couldn't possibly win because no one would ever take the Academy seriously again, but they have to do it to appear inclusive and like they're giving all diverse films a shot at winning, when in reality there's no way they could take themselves seriously if a film like that actually won. But they need to include it anyway, and it wins a bunch of technical awards like Best Song, Best Hair and Makeup or whatever. I think the big takeaway for this year is science fiction got snubbed again. Science fiction has never been taken seriously by the Academy. I don't think it will. I think, like I always say, they need to have a lot more categories and be a bit more inclusive with different types of films. Don't just have a overall Best Picture, have a Best Dramatic Film, because they used to have a musical and comedy section and that kind of disappeared. Have Best Action Film, Best Sci-Fi, best rom-com, best comedy, because comedic acting gets overlooked. Comedic acting can be harder than dramatic acting, but it's just not taken seriously. They could also have a popular film category, because a film like Wicked is probably never going to win for Best Picture, but they include it for Best Picture just to, like I said, appear diverse and like they care and they're including other films. But in reality, it's probably not going to win because, no one would ever take the Academy seriously again. But that doesn't mean those films shouldn't be recognised. Maybe start another fucking Oscars where it just looks at those type of films, more popular films, rather than the kitchen sink Oscar bait dramas that always seem to win. It's always the same type of film that wins. It's always of a certain subject matter, a certain dramatic quality. Dumb and Dumber's never going to win Best Picture, but doesn't mean that it shouldn't be included in the conversation, as they say. What some people like, others hate, and vice versa. I did notice that the political correctness was toned down this year. There weren't too many political jokes or political commentary of any type. They did try to stick mostly to the films. Occasionally it got off topic, but it was always brought back. I thought Conan was probably the best host they've had since Billy Crystal. I really hope he comes back. He was good, he was funny. He kept the jokes directed to the people in the room and to the film industry in general, unlike Jimmy Kimmel, who just seemed to make fun of Trump pretty much every year, who was also awkward, cringy, and lame. The other thing I'll say is I haven't heard of probably like 75% of the films that were nominated this year. I don't think even most of them are even out where I am. Never seen Anora on a billboard at my local cinema. I haven't seen a trailer for it or a poster. And half the films that get released around this time of the year, or back in January, only get released because they get an Oscar nomination, which I think is a big reason why people go to see them in the first place. But all in all, I think this year, more so than other years, proved once and for all that the Oscars are in fact dead and no longer relevant.
Step back into the world of 90s true crime with the Unsolved Couple podcast. Join Ben and me, Sierra, as we dive into the iconic TV show Unsolved Mysteries, providing you the updates you missed out on as a kid. It's the perfect mix of nostalgia and true crime. Join us every Tuesday as we recap your original gateway drug into true crime, Unsolved Mysteries.
And that brings us to the end of the episode. A big thank you to everyone who listened to the end. If you'd like to support the Truth Tank, there's a couple of things you can do. Head on over to the Facebook and Instagram page, give them a follow and a like, share them around, click the like button. You can download and listen to your favorite episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Castbox, Pandora, Amazon Music, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. Tell your friends, to your family, tell anyone you think might like the show. Help spread it around and get the word out there. If you really want to help the show out, you can leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or both. Both can't hurt. Each rating and review helps the show grow and would be greatly appreciated by me. Lie Communism is now set to come out about June of this year due to the, let's just say, technical issues I had with my computer in the beginning of March. I'm still working my way through the backlog of shows, but rest assured it will be out before the end of the year. I'll be back in the next week or two with a brand new episode, but until then, I'm the Tank. This is the truth. Truth to tell.